My name is Eleanor Winters and I'm 82 years old. I never imagined that at this stage of my life, I would be faced with a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my days. I'm just an ordinary grandmother with silver hair, wrinkled hands, and a quiet life spent in my little cottage in the woods. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and this time it was a pitch I wasn't ready for. It all started when my husband, George, was diagnosed with a kidney problem. At first, we thought it was just another minor health issue. He'd been a smoker for years and his health had been slowly deteriorating. But when the doctor told us it was far more serious than we had anticipated, my world turned upside down. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The doctor, a young man with glasses, sat us down in his office and spoke in hushed tones. "Mrs. Winters, Mr. Winters' kidneys are failing. We've tried everything, but the only option left is a transplant." My heart stopped. A transplant? My mind raced with thoughts of what that would mean. I looked at George, who was sitting beside me, his face pale and drawn. He tried to smile at me, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Do we have any options?" I asked, my voice trembling. The doctor nodded. "You may be a match, Mrs. Winters. If you're willing to donate one of your kidneys." I couldn't breathe. The thought of it was overwhelming. My husband needed my kidney to survive, but giving him one of mine was a life-altering decision. I'd always been healthy, but I was no spring chicken. What would this mean for me? Would I be able to live without my second kidney? Would I be strong enough to continue taking care of him? The questions flooded my mind, but none of them mattered when I looked at George lying helpless in that hospital bed. He was my everything. I had loved him for over 50 years. How could I say no? "I'll do it," I whispered. The doctor looked at me with a mix of concern and admiration. "Are you sure? It's a major surgery, Eleanor." "I'm sure," I replied, my voice steady now, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I will do anything for him." And so, I made the decision to donate one of my kidneys to George. I didn't think twice. I was doing it out of love, out of devotion, as any wife would. But what I didn't realize at the time was how this one decision would change the course of my life forever. The surgery was scheduled for the following week, and I was flooded with a mixture of anxiety and determination. I could feel the weight of the decision on my shoulders, but I tried to push it aside. All I could focus on was George and his recovery. I needed him to be healthy. He needed me. The night before the surgery, I sat in my small living room staring at the photographs on the wall. Pictures of our children, our grandchildren, and the life we had built together. I couldn't bear the thought of losing George. He had been my rock, my protector, my best friend. Now I was going to give him a piece of me, literally. But even as I sat there with the weight of the decision pressing on my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts, but I dismissed them. I was doing this for George. The next morning, as I lay in the hospital bed ready for the surgery, I was filled with a strange sense of calm. George had already been taken into surgery and I was next. I closed my eyes, trying to find peace in the moment. But just as I was about to drift off, I heard a soft knock on the door. "Eleanor, are you ready?" It was the nurse. I nodded, trying to smile. "Yes. Let's do this." But as I was wheeled into the operating room, my heart raced. My mind wandered to George, to our children, to everything I was risking. What if something went wrong? What if I didn't make it out of this surgery? But I pushed the thoughts aside. I had made my choice. There was no turning back. And then, as the anesthesia began to take effect, I heard one final thought in my mind before everything went black. What if I regret this? And just like that, the world faded away. The last thing I remembered was the image of George's face, his worried eyes staring at me as I was taken into the operating room. I never could have imagined what would happen next. As I woke up hours later, groggy and disoriented, I would learn something that would change everything. Something that would make me question everything I had done, and leave me with a regret so deep I could never escape it. What had I truly done? The darkness slowly lifted from my mind as I awoke in the sterile white room. My body felt heavy, my limbs sluggish, but there was something else. Something different. I opened my eyes to see a soft, blurry image of George standing beside me. His face was pale, but his eyes, they were filled with tears. "You're awake," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I blinked, trying to focus, but the pain was overwhelming. My side ached where the incision had been made. The familiar dull ache of post-surgery pain, but deeper this time, like something was missing, like I had given away a part of myself. How, how are you feeling? George asked, squeezing my hand. His voice was low, almost pleading. I tried to speak, but my throat felt dry. I croaked, I feel strange. That's normal, George said, his voice soft, but I could sense the underlying tension. The doctor said you'll need time to heal, but you're going to be okay, Eleanor. I nodded weakly, but something in the way he spoke made me uneasy. I tried to sit up, but the pain was sharp, sending waves of nausea through my body. I fell back onto the bed, gasping for breath. Don't push yourself, George insisted, pressing me gently back into the pillows. You've been through a lot. I looked up at him, trying to steady my breath, but my mind was racing. The surgery had been a success, they told me. George's kidney was functioning fine now. But something was off. My body felt different, as if it had been altered in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. But there was more. My eyes drifted to the window, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw something flash in George's eyes. A flicker of guilt, a shadow of something dark. I had always been able to read him like a book. We had been together for over 50 years. But now there was something hidden. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The nurse came in soon after, her cheerful voice filling the room. How are we feeling today, Eleanor? Just a little sore, I muttered, still feeling disoriented. We'll get you something for the pain. Don't worry, you're in good hands, she said with a smile. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the nurse was too cheerful, too practiced in her kindness. It all felt like a facade. The next few hours passed in a haze. I drifted in and out of consciousness, the painkillers keeping me numb but not quite enough to silence the nagging doubts in my mind. George was there by my side, but he seemed distant somehow. He was always busy on his phone, texting and making calls. I overheard snippets of conversations, talk of meetings, finances, things I didn't quite understand, but nothing about me, nothing about my recovery. That night, as I lay in my hospital bed, I could no longer ignore the growing sense of unease. The pain in my side wasn't the only ache I was feeling. My heart was heavy with the weight of something unknown. My mind kept returning to the moment before the surgery when I had that fleeting thought. What if I regret this? The following day, the doctor came in for my checkup. He was a calm, professional man in his 40s, with glasses perched on the end of his nose. He checked my vitals and glanced at my chart, then turned to me with a reassuring smile. Everything looks good, Eleanor, he said, but I noticed a strange hesitance in his voice. He paused before continuing, however, there's something I need to talk to you about. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? I asked, suddenly alert. The doctor glanced at George, who had been quietly standing by the door. His expression was unreadable, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Something guarded. Well, the doctor began slowly, it seems there was a complication during the surgery. Nothing major, but we did notice some irregularities in your kidney after it was removed. The tissue appeared to be more damaged than we expected. My breath caught in my throat. Damaged? I echoed the word, feeling like a blow to my chest. What does that mean? The doctor hesitated. We're still investigating, but we believe the kidney may have had some underlying issues before we even performed the transplant. It's possible that you were living with a compromised organ for longer than we realized. Unfortunately, that means you might experience more complications as you heal. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The words complications and damaged echoed in my mind, and I suddenly felt very small in that sterile hospital room. The doctor gave me a sympathetic look, but before I could ask more questions, George stepped forward. Is everything all right, doctor? His voice was tight, his expression strained. The doctor nodded, but I noticed the way he quickly glanced at George. We just need to keep an eye on things, that's all. Eleanor may need more care than originally anticipated, but we're doing everything we can. I could see the tension in George's posture. He seemed more agitated than I'd ever seen him. Thank you, doctor, he said quickly, turning his attention back to me. We'll talk more later, Eleanor. As the doctor left, George stayed behind. He was acting strange, almost as if he were avoiding my gaze. My suspicion deepened and I tried to sit up, ignoring the pain that shot through my side. George, I said softly, what's really going on? Why do I feel like you're hiding something from me? He looked away, his hand gripping the edge of the bed. You've just been through a lot, Eleanor. Rest okay? We'll talk later. But I knew that something wasn't right. That night, as I lay awake in bed, Unable to shake the feeling of something being off, I made a decision. I would find out what George was hiding. No matter how painful it might be, I needed to know. But little did I know, the truth I was about to uncover would change everything. And it would lead me to a place I would never have imagined. What had George been hiding from me all along? The days after the surgery blurred into one another. I spent most of my time in the sterile hospital room, drifting in and out of sleep, my body recovering from the intense procedure. George stayed by my side, but something about his presence felt different. He was there physically but emotionally distant. Every time I tried to talk to him, he deflected. He kept busy answering phone calls and making excuses to leave the room. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach had only grown stronger. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that George was hiding something. Something crucial. That evening, when the nurse came to check on me, I knew it was time. "Excuse me," I said softly, my voice still hoarse from the surgery. "Could you tell me when I'll be able to leave the hospital?" The nurse, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled and checked my chart. "Well, Eleanor, your recovery seems to be going well, but we still need to monitor you closely for a few more days. I know you're anxious to get home, but we want to make sure you're healing properly before you leave." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. The walls of this room were starting to close in on me. "I understand," I murmured, though I was far from satisfied with her answer. As she turned to leave, I noticed the hesitation in her step. She was holding something in her hand, something I hadn't seen before. She was carrying a file, the contents clearly marked with George's name on it. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't help myself. In that moment, I made a decision. I had to know what was in that file. I needed answers. When the nurse stepped out to speak with the doctor, I slowly reached over to the bedside table where the file had been left. I could feel my hands tremble as I picked it up, the weight of it heavy in my palms. I didn't even think twice. I opened the file, scanning through the pages quickly, desperate for some kind of clarity. The first page contained George's medical history. But the second page, it sent a shockwave through me. There, in black and white, was a letter from the transplant clinic, dated just a few weeks before my surgery. The letter was addressed to George. It took me a moment to fully process what I was reading. "Mr. George Winters, we regret to inform you that you are not an ideal candidate for kidney donation, as your kidney function is already in a critical state. We recommend a full evaluation before proceeding with any donation. However, our records show that your wife, Eleanor Winters, has been listed as your primary donor. This may be an issue given her advanced age, and the risks involved in performing the surgery on her are high." I froze. The words blurred in front of me as my pulse thundered in my ears. My mind raced. The transplant clinic had known that George was at risk of kidney failure, and they had warned him that I might not be a suitable donor. But George never told me any of this. Why hadn't he mentioned it? Why did he make it seem like everything was fine? I was shaking now, my fingers trembling as I turned the pages, desperate to find more. And I did. The next page was a copy of an email from the clinic to George, confirming that the transplant was a go. But what caught my attention was the timestamp. It was sent the day after my surgery had been scheduled. My stomach turned. It was as if George had known everything, known that there were risks to my health, known that I might not even be a good match, and yet he still allowed me to go through with it. But I couldn't breathe. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought was real, was slipping away from me. Just then George entered the room. He looked at me, and I could see the fear in his eyes when he saw the file in my hands. For a moment neither of us spoke. He knew what I had found, and he knew I was no longer in the dark. I closed the file slowly, my heart heavy with betrayal. "George," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" He took a deep breath, running a hand through his thinning hair. I didn't want to worry you, Eleanor. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I echoed, my voice rising. "By hiding the truth from me? By letting me risk my life for you when you knew there was a chance I might not even be a suitable donor?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I was scared. I didn't know what to do, and I thought if we just went ahead with it, everything would work out. I didn't want to lose you, Eleanor. But now, he stopped himself, his words faltering. "But now you've lost me," I said quietly, my heart sinking. The truth hit me harder than the pain from the surgery. "You lied to me, George." I sat up straighter in the bed, ignoring the ache in my side. You didn't just risk my life. You risked everything. You risked our marriage. You risked everything we've built together. George was silent, the weight of my words sinking in. He didn't argue, didn't try to explain. He just stood there, the guilt radiating off him like a heavy fog. I stared at him, my eyes filling with tears. I gave you my kidney. I gave you a part of me. And you didn't even care enough to be honest with me. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. But I knew deep in my bones that everything had changed. The trust that once held us together was shattered. And I wasn't sure how, or if, we could ever fix it. Just when I thought I had all the answers, just when I thought I could confront George and finally get the closure I so desperately needed, a new revelation came crashing into my world. I didn't know then that the truth wasn't over yet. There was still so much more to uncover. And what I was about to learn would push me beyond anything I ever imagined. The next few days were a blur of pain, betrayal, and confusion. The room that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. Every time I looked at George, I saw nothing but guilt and regret in his eyes. But there was still a part of me that couldn't fully let go of the man I had loved for so long. Part of me still wanted to believe that he hadn't intentionally hurt me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much damage had already been done. I tried to focus on my recovery. The doctors kept assuring me that I would heal physically, that my body would eventually adjust to the loss of a kidney. But how was I supposed to heal emotionally? How was I supposed to reconcile what George had done with the love I still felt for him? That night, as I lay in bed, unable to sleep, my mind kept racing. I couldn't shake the image of that letter, the one from the transplant clinic. The one that made it clear that George knew far more than he had let on. He knew the risks and he chose not to tell me. I tried to push the thought aside, but it wouldn't leave me. And then, like a bolt of lightning, something struck me, a realization so intense it took my breath away. If George had been hiding the truth about his health, what else had he been hiding? What other secrets was he keeping from me? My heart began to pound as I recalled the vague conversations he had with his lawyer on the phone. Conversations I'd overheard but hadn't fully understood at the time. Had George been planning something behind my back? Something more than just the kidney transplant? The thought consumed me, but it was all too much to process in that moment. I needed answers and I needed them now. But where could I go for them? Who could I trust? Suddenly I had an idea. An idea so unexpected that it made my pulse race with both fear and anticipation. I needed to speak to someone who knew George better than anyone. Someone who could give me the truth no matter how painful it might be. I needed to speak to his ex-wife, Anne. The phone call. It had been years since I last spoke to Anne. When George and I married, she had been a distant memory, a chapter in his life that we rarely discussed. But now, with everything hanging in the balance, I knew that she might hold the key to unlocking the truth. With shaking hands, I dialed the number I had stored in my contacts all these years. The phone rang twice before the familiar, cool voice on the other end answered. Hello. Anne's voice was curt, no warmth in her tone. I took a deep breath, unsure of how to begin. And it's Eleanor, George's wife. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear the slight edge of surprise in her voice. Eleanor? How are you? I'm fine, I said, though my voice betrayed me. Listen, I need to ask you something. It's about George. Anne's voice tightened. What about him? I hesitated for a moment, then decided to dive straight in. I found out that George knew about his kidney issues long before the surgery. He never told me. He lied to me, Anne. There was a long silence, and I could hear Anne taking a deep breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, more serious. Eleanor, I don't know what you've been told, but George has always kept things from you. I never agreed with the way he treated you. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. What are you saying? Anne sighed. I wasn't just George's ex-wife, Eleanor. I was also his confidant. And the truth is, George has always had a pattern of hiding things from the people closest to him. I'm sure you've seen that by now. The surgery, the kidney donation, it was all part of something bigger. What bigger thing? I demanded, feeling my pulse quicken. And paused again before speaking in a low, measured tone. I'm not the one who should tell you this, Eleanor, but I'll give you a warning. George has always had a plan. And right now you're just a part of it. I don't know what he's doing, but I've seen his tricks before. And believe me, this won't end the way you think. My blood ran cold. The plan? What was in talking about? How could George, the man I had trusted for decades, have had such hidden motives? What do you mean? What kind of plan? I asked, my voice trembling. But before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, the silence ringing in my ears. My head was spinning with confusion and fear. And had just dropped a bombshell, and I had no idea how to process it. What did it mean by a plan? What had George been hiding all these years? I had so many questions, but now I was even more lost than before. I couldn't stop thinking about what Anne had said. This won't end the way you think. But what was she warning me about? And why was George keeping so many secrets from me? I sat there for hours, staring at the phone in my hand, the words Anne had spoken echoing in my mind. This won't end the way you think. What did she mean? And why was George acting like he had something to hide? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. I had always trusted George. We had been through so much together. Tragedies, triumphs, and decades of memories. But now it felt like the very foundation of my life was crumbling. The truth was slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea how deep this deception ran. As the days passed, I tried to focus on my recovery, but my body wasn't the only thing that needed healing now. My heart was shattered and my mind was restless. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was missing something crucial. The pieces didn't fit together. George's sudden need for a kidney transplant, his secrecy, Anne's warning. It all seemed like a puzzle that I couldn't solve. Then something unexpected happened. It was early one morning when George came into my room, his usual composure gone. His face was pale, his eyes hollow with worry. He looked like a man who had just walked through a storm and was desperately trying to outrun it. "Eleanor," he began, his voice low. "We need to talk." I felt a chill run through me. The words I had been dreading were finally coming. I had known this conversation was coming. After all, how long could George keep running from the truth? He sat on the edge of the bed, avoiding my gaze. "I need to explain everything." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "Explain what, George? What's going on? What have you been hiding from me?" He sighed, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of his secrets was too much to bear. "I never wanted you to find out like this, Eleanor. But you're right. You deserve to know the truth. I didn't tell you everything about my health because I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of what would happen if you knew." I could hardly breathe. "What do you mean, scared?" "You're telling me now because I found out, not because you wanted to be honest with me." George's hands trembled as he clasped them in his lap. "You have to understand, Eleanor. This wasn't just about me. It was about the business, about the future. I needed you to be a match. I needed the surgery to go through for more than just my health. There were financial stakes involved. But I had no other choice." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "Financial stakes? What does that mean?" He hesitated before continuing, his voice cracking with emotion. "The surgery was the key to saving everything. You see, Eleanor, I've been in debt. Deep, deep debt. And I was counting on the transplant to give me the time I needed to get everything under control. If it failed, I don't know what I would have done. I was desperate, Eleanor. I never meant to hurt you. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Debt. Desperation. I had given him a kidney, a part of my body, because I loved him. And now here he was, telling me that his actions had been driven by financial pressure. You mean you used me? You put me through that surgery, put my life at risk for money?" I could feel my voice rising with anger and betrayal. "George, you lied to me. You made me think it was for my health, for our future. But it wasn't. It was for your future." His eyes welled with tears as he looked at me. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to put you in this position. I was trying to save everything, our family, our home, our future. But I see now how wrong I was. How selfish." I shook my head, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. "And what about me, George? What about us? Did you think I wouldn't care about your debts? Did you think I would just blindly follow you into this? I gave you a part of myself and you took it without telling me the truth. You didn't even ask me if I was willing to risk my life for your financial problems." "I know," he whispered. "I know I should have told you everything. I was too ashamed to admit it. And now I've lost you. And I deserve it." There was the admission. The truth I had been waiting for. But it didn't bring me any relief. Instead, it made the anger burn even hotter inside me. I had been used. Manipulated. For months I had been living a lie, and all the while George had been playing his own game. One that involved his debts, his business, and his future. But what about my future? What about the trust one had placed in him? What about the life we were supposed to share? I looked at George, my heart heavy with disappointment. You don't get it, do you? You don't understand how much you've broken me. You took my kidney, George. You took a part of me that I can never get back. And for what? So you could save yourself. His face crumpled with guilt. I never wanted it to be like this, Eleanor. I never wanted to hurt you. You did, I whispered, my voice breaking. You've hurt me more than you'll ever understand. I turned away from him, feeling the tears welling in my eyes. I need time, George. I need time to think about all of this. He nodded silently, not protesting, but the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. As George left the room, I felt a cold emptiness settle inside me. His confession had shattered everything I thought I knew about him, about our marriage, and about myself. But that wasn't the end. No, not by a long shot. I had one last thing to uncover. One last truth that George hadn't told me. And it would be the one that would destroy everything we had left. The days that followed were heavy with silence. I remained in my bed, allowing the space between George and me to stretch further and further. He had gone silent after his confession, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing storm of betrayal swirling in my chest. Every time I saw him, my anger would flare up again, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. I needed to think. I needed clarity. But that wasn't easy. The surgery had drained me both physically and emotionally, and the constant weight of the secrets George had kept from me made it hard to breathe. My mind raced with all the things I hadn't known, about the debt, his desperation, and the lie he had built his actions on. I could barely look at him, and yet I was still here, still in this marriage. I needed answers. More answers than George had already given. There was one question that gnawed at me, growing louder each day. If George was desperate enough to risk my life to save his own, what was he hiding now? What else had he been keeping from me? I had an uneasy sense that the truth was still out of reach, as though there were something just beyond my grasp. And I needed to know what that was. That's when I remembered the envelope, the one I had found when I went through George's things last week. I hadn't been able to bring myself to open it. I thought it was just more of the same, a reminder of all the lies, but something about it kept pulling at me. I knew then that I had to face whatever was inside. If there was more to George's deception, I needed to know. And the only way to get the full picture was to confront the darkness head-on. That night, when George was downstairs in the living room watching TV, I made my decision. I walked to our bedroom, my heart pounding as I reached for the envelope on the nightstand. My hands shook as I tore it open, revealing a letter written in George's scrawled handwriting. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Eleanor. I know this is hard to understand, but I need you to know the truth. The truth about everything. There are things I've done that I'm ashamed of, and I can't hide them from you anymore. But I need you to understand that everything I've done, I did for us. For our family. I can't go on pretending that things are okay, and I can't go on pretending that you don't deserve the truth. So here it is. I haven't just been dealing with financial problems. There's more. The business I've been involved in. There's something you don't know. I've been using my name to secure a deal, a big deal that will secure our future for years to come. But the deal is risky, Eleanor. Too risky. And that's why I needed the transplant. I needed to stay healthy, to hold everything together until the deal goes through. But there's more. Something else you'll never forgive me for. I've been seeing someone else. Someone who knows about the business and the deal. And she's been involved in everything from the finances to to everything. I never meant to hurt you. But now I see that I have. And for that I am truly sorry. But this is the truth. All of it. I froze. The words blurred before my eyes. My stomach turned as I read the letter again, the reality sinking in. George had been seeing someone else. He had been having an affair. And worse, this woman, whoever she was involved in everything. The finances, the business deal, even my kidney donation. My mind reeled. How long had this been going on? How many lies had George told me? And what was this business deal he had been keeping from me? I was shaking now, barely able to hold the letter in my hand. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything that had been built on lies. The surgery, the debts, the secrecy, the woman. It was all part of a twisted game that I had never been a part of. I had been the pawn, and George had been playing me the whole time. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Anger, sadness, betrayal, they all mixed together, creating a storm that I could barely understand. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a full-blown lie, one that had been carefully constructed and hidden from me for months, if not years. As I sat there, tears streaming down my face, I realized something. George had never seen me as his partner. He had seen me as a means to an end, a way to fix his problems, to save his future. And he had been willing to sacrifice me in the process. I knew then that the truth wasn't enough. George's confession was only the beginning, but it didn't explain everything. I had more questions than ever before. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't going to walk away from this without knowing everything. I had to confront the woman George had been seeing. She knew too much. She held the answers I needed. But the question was, would I be able to handle the truth when I finally faced her? The days that followed were the hardest I had ever faced. My emotions were a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and a deep, gnawing sorrow. I had given George everything, my love, my trust, my health. And in return he had given me nothing but lies, deceit, and betrayal. I had thought our life together was built on something real, something pure. But now it felt like the foundation had cracked and all that was left was rubble. But I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I had made a decision. If I was going to get the answers I needed, I had to face the woman who had been part of George's secret life. She had to be the one to explain everything, because George clearly wasn't capable of being honest with me. I didn't know her name, but I had a feeling I wasn't going to have to search too hard to find her. The letter George had written mentioned her involvement in everything. Financially, emotionally, and even with the transplant. She was connected to the lies, to the scheme George had pulled off. It took me hours to gather the courage, but finally I stood in front of the mirror, taking a deep breath. The reflection that stared back at me was someone different. Someone stronger. Someone who wasn't going to let this slide. I put on my coat, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the door, determined to find her. It wasn't hard to track her down. In this small town, people talk. I visited the places I knew George had frequented, asking carefully crafted questions, always watching for signs that someone knew her. Finally, after hours of asking, I found her. Her name was Veronica. She was a woman in her mid-30s, tall and striking, with long dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She wasn't the type of woman who blended into a crowd. She had an air of confidence about her that made people notice her. I found her at a cafe downtown, sitting alone at a corner table, sipping coffee and reading a book. I could see her face clearly through the window. She had no idea who I was, but I knew in that moment that I had to confront her. I walked in, my heart pounding, and took a seat across from her without a word. She looked up, startled, her eyes immediately narrowing as she recognized me. I didn't wait for her to speak. I had too much to say and I wasn't going to waste time. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "What's your relationship with my husband, George?" Veronica didn't flinch. She placed the book down calmly, meeting my gaze. "I should have known you'd find me eventually," she said, her tone cool, almost indifferent. "You've been a part of everything," I continued, my anger seeping through. "The debts, the lies, the transplant. You knew everything about it, didn't you? You knew about the affair. You knew what George was doing to me." She took a slow sip of her coffee, then placed the cup back on the table. "I'm not the one you should be angry with, Eleanor," she said softly, but with a hint of bitterness. "George is the one who made the choices. I was just part of the plan, a necessary part for him." I clenched my fists, trying to control the emotions bubbling up inside me. "A necessary part? You don't get to justify what you've done. You were a willing participant. You helped him manipulate me. You helped him steal from me." Veronica's eyes softened, though there was no apology in her gaze. "I didn't steal anything from you, Eleanor. I didn't ask for this. George made the decision, not me. But I knew what I was getting into. I knew about his debts, about the business he was trying to save. And I knew that in the end I wasn't going to be the one who paid for it." I was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What did George tell you?" She leaned back in her chair, her hands folding in her lap. "He told me he needed help. That he needed someone to be there, someone who could help him with the finances and the deals. He said you'd never understand, that you wouldn't be able to handle the pressure. I didn't have a choice, Eleanor. I did what I had to do to stay in control. I shook my head, struggling to make sense of what she was saying. You think you were helping him? You think this was about saving him? No, Veronica. This was about using me. You used me to get to what you wanted. You and George both used me for your own gain. She stared at me with a hard expression. You're wrong. This was never about you. You just didn't know the whole story. George never planned on telling you. But I knew he was in too deep. And I knew you'd never forgive him once you found out. I felt a chill settle over me as her words hit their mark. You knew. I whispered, realization dawning on me. You knew all along how this would end, didn't you? Veronica didn't answer at first, but her eyes gave her away. There was a slight, almost imperceptible nod. I knew the moment I got involved that this wasn't going to end well for anyone. But you, Eleanor. You were never supposed to find out the way you did. I never thought you'd have the strength to dig this deep. But now that you have, I don't think there's any turning back for you. Her words lingered in the air like smoke, each one more suffocating than the last. I realized in that moment just how tangled the web had become. George, Veronica, the debts, the lies. It was all connected. Everything had been a game to them and I had been the pawn. As I sat there staring at Veronica, I knew the worst was yet to come. I had uncovered more than I had bargained for, and the truth was like a knife twisting in my gut. But I still wasn't ready for what I would learn next. Veronica had just dropped a bombshell, but there was one final piece of the puzzle. And when I found it, I would realize that everything I had been led to believe was nothing more than an illusion. But would I survive the truth when it finally came crashing down? I left the cafe that afternoon with my mind in turmoil. Veronica's words rang in my ears, each one adding weight to the unbearable burden I was carrying. I had always known George was hiding something, but the depths of his lies, his manipulation, and the role Veronica played, these were truths I was not prepared for. The drive back to my house felt like a slow-motion nightmare. I couldn't escape the images of Veronica's cool, detached demeanor, and the realization that she had been in on this twisted game all along. I was no longer just George's wife. I had become a part of the mess, a player in a game I didn't even know was being played. I pulled into the driveway, the house looming in front of me like a fortress. It was supposed to be our sanctuary, our safe place. But now it felt more like a prison. Every corner, every room seemed to echo with the lies George had told me. I didn't know if I could look at it the same way again. George was sitting in the living room when I entered. He looked up at me, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly. He knew what I had found out. He knew that I was no longer the woman who had blindly supported him for all these years. I didn't say a word. I walked past him, heading straight for the kitchen. I needed space, time to think, and I didn't want to engage in another futile conversation where he would try to justify himself. But George followed me. He always followed me when I was angry, when I was upset. He couldn't let me be alone with my thoughts. He had to fix things, to smooth everything over as though I could just forget what I now knew. Eleanor, he called softly, standing at the doorway, his voice trembling. Please, let me explain. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. There's nothing left to explain, George. You've said everything I need to hear. The truth is out. The secrets, the lies, everything. You don't understand, he insisted, his voice rising. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just trying to save us. Save our future. But now I see how much I've hurt you. I see how much I've destroyed. I finally turned to face him. My heart was pounding in my chest, but the anger coursing through me kept my voice steady. You're right. You've destroyed everything. You've destroyed me. And now I don't even know who you are anymore. George's face crumpled, the mask of the confident, controlling man slipping for the first time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to fix it. I thought I could handle everything on my own. I thought you would understand if I just kept it all from you. Understand? I echoed, my voice cold with disbelief. You thought I would understand that you were using me? That you were willing to risk my life for your own selfish reasons? George took a step toward me, his eyes pleading. No, Eleanor. I didn't mean for it to be like that. I thought I could protect you, keep you safe from all of this. But I've made so many mistakes and I don't know how to fix them. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that I would never forgive him. But the truth was, a part of me still loved him. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, I still cared for the man I had married so many years ago. It was this conflicting emotion that made it impossible for me to walk away. I don't know if I can forgive you, George, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I even want to. He looked crushed, his shoulders slumping as he ran a hand through his hair. I'll do anything, Eleanor. Anything. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. I looked at him for a long moment, my heart torn in two. But then something clicked. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they all fueled a decision I had been avoiding for too long. You can't fix this, George, I said firmly. What's done is done. The damage is already done. And now you have to face the consequences of your actions. He looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and despair. What are you saying? I'm saying it's over, I said, my voice clear. I can't live with this anymore. I can't live with the lies, with the secrets. I gave you a piece of myself and you took it and you used it for your own gain. You don't get to do that to me anymore. George's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I thought he might argue. But he didn't. Instead, he simply nodded, his face a mask of sorrow. If that's what you want, he said quietly, I'll respect it. I turned away from him, my heart heavy with the weight of the decision I had made. But I knew it was the right one. I wasn't going to be a part of George's game anymore. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me any longer. The truth had come out, and now it was time to move forward, even if it meant leaving him behind. As I walked away, I heard George's voice calling my name one last time. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. But as I made my way toward the door, a thought hit me, a chilling realization that I hadn't considered before. George wasn't the only one with secrets. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was something even darker lurking in the shadows of our life together. Something I wasn't ready for. Something that would change everything. And now I had to face it. The next few days felt like a fog. The house that once felt like home now felt foreign, a place where the past lingered in every corner, reminding me of the betrayal, the lies, the years wasted. George and I barely spoke after that night. I stayed in the guest bedroom and he remained in our shared space, though it didn't feel like we were living together anymore. It felt more like two strangers forced to coexist under the same roof. I wanted to move out, to leave it all behind, but something kept me tethered here. Maybe it was the house, our children's memories, the life we had built. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because I wasn't ready to face the world alone. But whatever the reason, I couldn't bring myself to make the final decision. But then something happened, something that shattered everything I thought I knew. I had been sitting in the living room, the silence between us thick and suffocating, when the doorbell rang. I was surprised. We didn't have many visitors these days. I walked to the door, opening it to find a woman standing there, a woman I didn't recognize. She was in her late 30s, wearing a professional outfit, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. She had an air of confidence about her, and the moment I saw her, a chill ran down my spine. "Mrs. Winters?" she asked, her voice polite but firm. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent." I was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. "Who are you?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. She glanced over her shoulder as if checking to see if anyone was watching. "My name is Claire Marshall," she said. "I'm an attorney. I represent the company George Winters has been dealing with." I felt my pulse quicken. "Attorney? What is this about?" She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "It's about the deal, Mrs. Winters. And about George's financial obligations." The moment she said it, I knew. I knew this was about more than just George's debts or business. This was bigger. My entire body tensed as she continued. "I'm afraid there are some things you don't know, Mrs. Winters," Claire said, her voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "George didn't just take out loans or get involved in shady business deals. There's a reason his debts are so large. And I'm afraid the woman you're dealing with, Veronica, she's just the tip of the iceberg." I felt my knees weaken, but I steadied myself against the doorframe. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Claire hesitated before speaking again. "I'm here to tell you that George's entire financial situation, the transplant, the lies, the debts, everything is connected. He's been using you, Mrs. Winters. And not just for money. There's a much darker connection to this whole mess." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Claire glanced over her shoulder once more, then leaned in closer. "George has been using his personal and business dealings to launder money, Eleanor. And he's been doing it for years. The debts you thought were his. They're tied to an organization much more dangerous than you can imagine. I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. Money laundering? But that's illegal. Why would George be involved in something like that? She nodded, her face hardening. Because he was desperate. And because he believed he could get away with it. But now things have spiraled out of control. And you're part of it. I felt the room spin. Money laundering. An organization. George. All of it crashing into me like a wave. The betrayal was deeper than I ever imagined, and I couldn't breathe. No, I said, shaking my head. This can't be true. I'm afraid it is, Claire said gently. And I'm here to help you. You have to understand, Mrs. Winters. George is in too deep. The debt, the lies, the transplant. They were all part of a larger plan. But now the consequences are much bigger. And you're going to have to make some difficult decisions. I didn't know how to respond. My head was spinning, my body numb. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice breaking. Why are you telling me all this? I'm telling you because you need to know what's coming, she said, her voice soft but insistent. I want to help you protect yourself. I've seen what's happening, and if you don't act fast, everything you know and everything you've worked for could be taken from you. I felt the blood drain from my face as her words sank in. The truth was worse than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about George's affair. This was about a criminal network, about money laundering, and about everything he had done behind my back. It wasn't just the betrayal of our marriage. It was a betrayal of everything I had built, everything I had trusted. I stood there, frozen, the weight of it all crashing down on me. Mrs. Winters, Claire said, her voice low, the people George has been involved with, they're not just going to let him walk away. And if you're not careful, they'll come after you too. The room seemed to close in around me. The betrayal, the lies, and now the danger. Everything I thought I knew about my life with George was unraveling. What was I supposed to do now? The night was thick with tension as I sat in the living room, alone with the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. Claire had left after giving me her contact information and an unsettling warning. You're running out of time, Eleanor. If you want to protect yourself, you need to act fast. Her words echoed in my mind, reverberating off the walls of the house. The house that had once been filled with love, laughter, and the quiet security of a long, happy marriage. Now it felt like a cold, empty shell, a place I couldn't recognize anymore. I glanced over at George, who was sitting in the armchair across from me, his eyes filled with a sorrow that didn't reach his soul. He knew what I had learned. He knew that everything was coming undone, and all he could do was sit there, silent, waiting for the inevitable. Eleanor, I never wanted any of this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for you to get caught up in it. I didn't want you to be hurt. You're the last person I ever wanted to drag into my mess. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I'm already in the mess, George. There's no pretending anymore. You don't get to hide from this. You've ruined everything. I know, he said, the guilt in his eyes as he looked down at his hands. And I can't undo what's been done. I don't know how to make it right. I shook my head, the anger welling up again. It's too late for that. You've lied to me for years, George. You've used me, manipulated me, and I let you. I trusted you more than anyone, and now? I don't even know who you are anymore. He stood up slowly, his movements lethargic, as though the weight of the truth was suffocating him. He crossed the room and stood in front of me, his hands trembling as he reached out toward me. Eleanor, please. I'm begging you. Don't leave me like this. I stood up as well, backing away from him, the space between us growing wider. You've already left me, George. You left me the moment you decided to involve me in your lies, your debts, and your secret life. You left me the moment you made the decision to risk my health and my life for your own selfish reasons. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I had cried enough. Now I needed to be strong. For me. For my future. I gave you my kidney, I whispered, my voice cracking. I gave you a part of myself, George. And you took it. For what? To save your business? To save yourself? You never thought of me. You never thought of what it would do to me. He looked like he wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, he just stood there, a man broken by his own actions. I can't do this anymore, I said firmly, taking a step back. I've spent years putting you first, believing in you, and all this time you were hiding things from me. You were making decisions that affected both of us, and I didn't even know. His face contorted with desperation. Eleanor, please. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I can't live without you. I swear I'll do anything to make it right. Please. I shook my head, wiping away the tears that had finally begun to fall. You can't fix this, George. You can't fix what you've broken. I don't know who you are anymore. And I don't think I can ever trust you again. I turned toward the door, but before I could leave, George's voice stopped me. Eleanor, you're the only person I've ever truly loved. Don't let this destroy us. Please. I paused, my hand resting on the doorknob. For a brief moment I considered turning back. The man I had loved for so many years was standing there, broken and pleading, and a part of me still wanted to help him. But then I thought about everything he had put me through, the years of lies, the betrayal, the pain. This wasn't love anymore. This was manipulation. This was George trying to salvage what was left of his broken life, and he wanted me to pick up the pieces. But I couldn't. I had given enough. With a heavy heart, I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The road ahead. As I walked down the path from the house, the cool night air hit my face, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the house I had just left behind. It was over. I had made the decision that had been looming over me for so long. I couldn't stay with George anymore. I couldn't live in the shadow of his lies. But even as I walked away, a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. Claire had warned me. There were still people out there, people who were involved in George's mess. People who wouldn't let him walk away unscathed. And now, by walking away, I had put myself at risk too. I didn't know what the future held. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer going to be a victim. I had survived George's betrayal. I had survived the pain, the manipulation, and the lies. And now it was time to rebuild. But just as I was about to get into my car, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my heart skip a beat. It was Claire. Before I could answer, a chilling thought ran through my mind. What if George's debts weren't the only thing he had been hiding from me? I answered the phone. Mrs. Winters, Claire's voice said, sharp and urgent. You need to get somewhere safe. Now.